You're welcome to the Economy and Politics program. I'm Ottoabasi Abasiekong. This edition will discuss the national grid collapse, challenges and options for Nigeria. Joining me virtually for this discourse is Mr. Muktar Mohammed, an energy analyst. It's nice to have you once again on the program, Mr. Muktar.
My pleasure always to be on your program. Thank you for having me.
As you can see, we are grappling with the national grid. The collapse has been a recurring decimal this year, and it's a huge concern across the country. Let us begin by understanding what is the challenge with the national grid. Is it infrastructure? Is it investments, distribution, or generation? I know that the federal government said they need about $10 billion in terms of investment and funding, but what is really the challenge?
I think the four things you mentioned is that the challenge with the national grid: infrastructure, investments, generation, distribution. All are the major problem the national grid is facing. When you look at infrastructure, uh, since I can remember any investment that have gone to that space for a long time in terms of removing the those obsolete equipment that have been there, because again, in power, it takes a lot of time to fabricate some of those equipment to bring them back and everything. So it's not something that can be done within the shortest possible time. And I think we've paid lip service to that. And again, if you can recall what the EFCC chairman said also yesterday, I think during the week, he said that a lot of these things is induced by corruption, people not delivering what they are supposed to deliver. So that is one. Then you talk about investment. I've really invested so much in the power sector. I think we have in a way, but again, commensurate with how long it took us before we started investing, then we've not done so much because it was a sector that was abandoned for a very long time. So definitely those investments are ongoing, and we didn't get it right when we decided to privatize because again, we had issues really getting the right players. Some of these people that acquire these distribution companies are really politicians and trying to get engineers, and they didn't have the technical backup. That is a major problem in terms of investment. When you talk about generation, I think generation, if you look at what the Transmission Company of Nigeria have been saying, generation have been improving and consistently. But again, distribution cannot absorb all that they generate because of obsolete equipment. That goes back again to infrastructure. So it's a link. If you look at infrastructure, you look at investment, you look at distribution, you look at generation. I think all are interlinked to the problem that we are having with the national grid.
This is the huge challenge. I don't know how it is for you, Mr. Muktar. It's keying into cost for businesses, for households. When it collapses, your power supply is affected and your whole program and plan is disrupted. I mean, it's a very, very serious issue. And analysts are clamoring for the disaggregation of the national grid. The Electricity Act empowers states to get involved in the power sector value chain. I remember we've had a conversation around this where we talked about the Electricity Act and some states going in. Lagos has already taken some lead. Even Akwa Ibom State, Enugu State, they're all coming out with the electricity value chain plan. But when should we expect to see the effects of these reforms that will begin to unlock this sector?
You look at the state you just mentioned, Akwa Ibom, happened to be a state that have been in power for a very long time. The Ibom power plant. I mean, it's a project that was, yes, it was a project that was conceived by the then governor of Akwa Ibom State, Victor Atta. And you see, you can see the long time. So that's why Akwa Ibom has been generating, have been adding to the national grid for a very long time. And so what we are going to see in a state like Akwa Ibom is if they were allowed to generate their own. Remember, at the time that Victor Atta did this, it was the exclusive right. Only the federal government could own a power plant or generate. So they had to generate and give back to the national grid. So if you look at that investment, you realize there's an investment that has taken a lot of time, and it was from a governor at that time that had a vision of what they want to do. So that is one. Then again, when you look at Enugu State, remember at the point they also wanted to generate power using coal. And before we know this, it's not the right energy at the moment, and a lot of things went up because of the environmental impact of coal. So maybe they are going back there because some countries are still using coal. A country like South Africa are still using coal to generate electricity, even if they call it dirty energy. And if you look at Lagos State, yes, Lagos State have done that. But again, in terms of when you look at the kind of mini grid that Lagos State did, was just to supply power to the federal secretary, I mean, their state secretariat in Alausa. So it's not always easy. You're seeing Ogun State or Osun State, all others trying to get involved in it. But like I said, it's always capital intensive. It's not something that you just do today. It's not like the telecom sector that you mount a mouse and then you begin to generate. So this has a lot to do with investment, and it's a long-time project. So yes, people say that I totally support it. But again, we must know that if we are going into that, it's not something that will be achieved in the next 6 months, and it's capital intensive. It needs a lot of investment. And for state governors to do that, they need to get down to the PPP, public-private partnership. That will be the only solution, rather than just allowing state government to use their scarce resources to say they want to invest in power.
I agree with you, because even Kano State, we're talking about 100 megawatt power solution that's not so tied to the grid, this whole issue around the grid. So PPP is a very important thing, and transparency is very key, Mr. Muktar, because states are under scrutiny in terms of transparency. Looking at the sector's distribution segments, can the current pricing and power delivery system, that's including metering, I know last time we talked, you mentioned the challenge of metering, that we need to have more metering to create value. Can this provide value to the operators, investors, and stakeholders to optimize output? Because that's what we really need at this time.
It will, but unfortunately, it has not. But it will, it should, and it will, because again, metering is the solution to energy theft that they have been clamoring for a very long time. So with metering, you can know when you know how much you distribute and how much somebody is supposed to consume. And when you see that not happening, then you need to check and you do your investigation. A situation whereby a power company just come and decide to think that somebody is bypassing, maybe the person is providing an alternative source of energy for itself, is not good for government. So I totally agree with you. Metering is a issue. It's good for the investors, it's good for the stakeholders, and it's also good for the players. But my challenge with the metering process is that it has not been tidy. It has not been done with a lot of integrity and intentionality. We've seen a lot of rollout through the World Bank scheme, but it's just like the more you see, the more you hear, the less you see, and the less you understand. So I think we shouldn't stop. We should stop playing lip service to that. What we've seen is that military are now being made in areas that are economic variable to the distribution companies, especially to people that are in band A. They seem to be the one that enjoy a lot of metering. Other sectors, other band don't seem to, band A and band B seems to enjoy a lot of metering, and other sector don't seem to enjoy that. And the reason for that, you and I know, because they think that enough energy is not being provided at that sector. Rather, they rather do estimated billings for those other bands. So I think it's something that government should not pay lip service to, and also the Federal Consumer Protection Agency also should also look at that. And I think is the key to really tap into the huge potential that we have in Nigeria. If we have companies that we invest in military with the distribution company. So for me, all these are things that we should have put in place before we begin to think about whether the tariff are right tariff, are we really getting value. If you want to get value for it, then you have to provide the service. The service must be seamless, not a situation whereby you are trying to get value in terms of increasing tariff, and then in terms of bringing out good product, it seems to be non-existent.
Yeah, I mean, there are some concerns I would like to raise before we go to the next part of this conversation. From what you just said, I know that there's a metering manufacturing company in Akwa Ibom and some other states in the country. I think it's time to see us having scale. And then from the human angle, I was so touched when I saw that University College Hospital, UCH, one of the best teaching hospitals in the country in Ibadan, the cost of 400 million naira debt to the Ibadan distribution company, of course, they've been cut off power supply. You know how that has impact on the healthcare. the whole win-win situation is required there on how that can be cleared again, service being affected. And like you rightly said, finding a clear solution around the whole issue of regulation. SCBC has won the disco. So let's see if action will be taken where discos default, because that should be served as a deterrent to other distribution companies. We'll keep track on that, Mr. Mukhtar. But let's look at the outlook for the power sector in 2025. The year is wrapping up now. How does this fit into the expectation of other critical industries like manufacturing? When you hear how manufacturers have spent so much on power, getting their own power, it's been huge cost for business for them and other sectors, even hospitality and others. So the issues of pricing, gas, infrastructure, and even diversification of energy sources. Looking at these four things or three things I've mentioned, how would they come to play as we enter 2025?
You see, in 2025, I think a lot of things will happen in the power sector, especially we need to start seeing results in terms of the power sector reform that have been embarked upon by this administration. That is one. And then we need to see those results in clear terms, in deliverables, especially in the area of generation and distribution. For me, that is what will happen in 2025. Now, for businesses, I think those that really suffer are the smaller business, the SMEs, the smaller manufacturing company that depend solely on power from the national grid, or those that depend on may have to use their own generating plant. When you talk about generating plant, you're talking about generators that use diesel. These have increased the cost of production, making some of their goods very expensive. But if you look at the larger companies and the bigger companies, you realize that most of them, the bigger manufacturing companies, have decided to have their own independent power generation plant for a very long time. They invested a lot on that. And so they are not really all connected to the national grid, like other smaller business. And when you look at the key driver of the Nigerian economy, the life wire of the Nigerian economies are the smaller businesses. So when you see this power situation not being resolved, it also have a way of affecting the smaller business. So if we don't resolve the power issues, we'll see a lot of smaller business go out, and that will create a lot of unemployment in an already volatile unemployment environment. So I think what we should look for in 2025 is a robust investment with critical decision and deliverables, like I said, in January to March, in first quarter, in second quarter, in third quarter, in fourth quarter. What should we be expecting? What should we as consumer be expecting? What should the regulators, what should we be expecting from the regulators? What in terms will we be expecting from the generation and for the distribution company? What type of investment will they be investing in, especially in replacing this obsolete equipment that have been using, so that they can be able to absorb all that is generated? The situation whereby here distribution companies saying they don't want to collect from the national grid, they have had enough. It's not good for our nation, and it's a disgrace for a country like Nigeria. So I think 2025 should be the year that we should see the coming together of most of these power reform policies that are embarked upon by the current administration, especially in the area of pricing. We need to have the right pricing, and also I think you should start looking at this issue of band A, band B, band C, band D, band E, band F. It doesn't help anybody. Whereby it's for me, it's more or less like apartheid in the electricity sector, where a particular band seems to have power more than the particular band, and they are all in the same country. They're supposed to be equity and justice. So I think those are things that we look into going forward, intending to make sure that a lot of things happen in the power sector in 2025.
In 1 minute, Mr. Mukhtar, if you had a session with the President and Minister of Power to say, how can we address this national grid collapse and the options ahead, what are the two things you would say?
One of them is we should create a backup system for it. Mr. Tojo, whereby all we are in only in one area thinking of generating, we should create a backup. For me, that is there's also, so we should also look at other alternative source of power. Talking about solar, maximizing that solar aspect also, and also looking at other building of nuclear plant also, because we have all we can We can do it. So for me, that's what I will be telling the minister. Rather than just sit down there and think about just investment in terms of using gas and we have the national gas policy is not working. Let's begin to see how we can diversify to other renewable energy, cleaner energy like solar energy and nuclear energy. That for me, that's what I'll be telling the minister if I see him today.
Diversify for cleaner energy. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Muktar Mohammed. Very interesting insights on the whole issues around power sector. We're very clear that with the challenges we've seen, we need clear articulation of policy. These reforms, you're very confident that next year we should see everything coming to place, and we hope that happens for the good of the country. Thank you once again, Mr. Muktar Mohammed, energy analyst, for this conversation. We look forward.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Conversations with this sector improving. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
That was a very interesting conversation on one sector that impacts the whole country, whether it's households, businesses, governments, every activity. Power is very critical, and we must address this with a holistic approach to ensure that it keys into our national productivity. To our viewers, if you want to get further insights on this conversation, visit the ProShare website displayed on the screen and follow our social media platforms to engage further on this program. Until we come your way again, enrich yourself with the knowledge of socio-economic developments around you. It is wise. I'm Ottoabasi Abasiekong. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.